Shabbat Shalom, Happy Sabbath. This morning, we want to look at the subject, the witness against you. The witness against you. And we know that the true witness is none other than Yeshua HaMashiach. And therefore, we want to look at the book of Ibrim, that's the book of Hebrews. And I believe that this book, perhaps more than all the other books, presents a richness of the Messiah that is unrivaled anywhere else. We see him here as the Kohen Agadal, the great high priest. We see him as the Redeemer. We see him as the sovereign of sovereigns, King of kings. We see him in such a way that the very thematic structure of the word is such that the writer brings together information and puts it around the subject, Yeshua, in such a way that we cannot but stand in awe of his majesty, the book of Hebrews. The scholars, they vary in the sense that they're not clear who writes the book of Hebrews. And so they have conjectured. Some say it is Paul. Some have said it is Barnabas. Some have even said it's Peter. Some say it is Luke. Some say Barnabas. But as I look through this, as we perambulate through the book of Ibrim, I am convinced that the writer of the book of Hebrew is none other than the physician Luke. I believe that, particularly when I read Hebrews chapter 4 and verse 12. I hear the writer saying, "For the word of Yahweh is quick and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing even the dividing asunder of the soul and the spirit and of the joints and the marrow, and is discerning of the thoughts and intents of the heart." When I read that, I see a physician writing, because he's likening the word to a surgeon's scalpel, cutting to the very quick. And I've convinced myself that the writer here is the physician Luke, Dr. Luke. And so come with me to chapter 1, and we'll read a few verses here. And the word says, "Yah, who at sundry times and in diverse manners spoke in time past unto the fathers by the prophets, hath in these last days spoken unto us by his Son, whom he hath appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the worlds, who being the brightness of his glory and the express image of his person, and upholding all things by the word of his power, when he had by himself purged our sins, sat down on the right hand of the majesty on high, being made so much better." And as you go through the book of Hebrews, you see the word better. He's better than Aaron. He's better than Moses. He's better than Abraham. He's better than David. And so what we're looking at here is that we're talking about a greatness that is such that he supersedes everyone else. His preeminence is such that it leaps out of the pages of the book of Hebrews. And so the writer is letting you know that his majesty is such that he's better than the angels. They worship him because he made them. And so the thing here is not talking about something being superfluous, but he's talking about something that is superb. The majesty of him. Unto how many of the angels did he say, thy throne, O Yah? None of them. And so this is who speaks to us in these last days, the witness against us. But I want to take you back to the book of Ibrim, and that's the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 31. And we will begin at verse 24. Ibrim. We're at that stage now where the children of Israel had gone to Mount Sinai after the Passover. 50 days into it, Yah had spoken morality to them, saying, if you obey me, you will be to me a kingdom of priests. That was a covenant he had with them. He said, I want you to be a kingdom, not just one person being a priest, but a kingdom of priests. That's the kind of relationship he wants with his people. That everybody understand the sacred nature of a priest and how they should live within this generation that we live in. They said everything that Yah says we will do, but in chapter 32 of Exodus, Shemot, there was a golden calf incident whereby they were worshiping this golden calf, and they broke the covenant. They broke the covenant. And so here in Deuteronomy, they were given a different set of laws. We call this the book of the law versus the book of the covenant. Few people really understand the nature of this. So the word says here, verse 24, and it came to pass when Moshe had made an end of writing the words of this law in a book until they were finished. Notice, with the 10 commandments, Yah himself wrote those commandments with his finger. So we have to make that distinction. There is a juxtapositional distinction between the book of the covenant and the book of the law. If you don't understand that, you're likely to get yourself in trouble when you start reading Galatians and Paul says the law is done away with. You're then confused in believing, as so many do, that the 10 commandments are done away with. So I want to make this clear. There is no ambiguity here, either patent or latent. It is quite clear. So we want to look at the perspicuity of what is being said here. So after Moses had written the law in a book, and he was now finished, verse 25, that Moshe commanded the Levites, which bear the ark of the covenant of Yah, saying, take this book of the law and put it in the side of the ark of the covenant of Yah your Elohim, that it may there be a witness against you. That's our subject today. The witness against you. They had broken, that's the children of Israel, the covenant agreement. The book of the covenant was put inside of the ark. The 10 Commandments were put inside of that chest. But the book of the law, the book of Deuteronomy, Ibrim, was put in the side. And they were told, it is a witness against you. It holds you accountable for what is inside of it. That's what is being said. So, as we understand that, Deuteronomy, Ibrim, is at the side, and it's a witness against the people of Israel, ancient Israel, because they had broken what was inside. So the law, the book of the law, holds them accountable for the book of the covenant that is inside. And so the question is, for what purpose, therefore, was the book of Hebrews written? Why was Luke writing the book of Hebrews? What was the purpose? It's quite clear that it was written to Hebrews. So I take great delight, being an Hebrew myself, reading from the book of Hebrews. It's written to me. And my Messiah is Hebrew. And I am a seed of it, so I take great delight in the book of Hebrews. But we've got to understand the purpose of the book, what was going on at that time. The believers at this time, during the reign of Nero, were under persecution. Great persecution. Some were losing their houses. Many things were happening to them, and they were being shoved into a situation, a corner, as it were, to renounce their faith. We had Judaism that was established, and then we have this new way called Christianity. Judaism was, to some extent, legalized, but Christianity was an offense to them. And so Nero would sometimes offer some of these people to the gladiators and to lions. They were under persecution. And it was all right in the Roman Empire at this time. If you renounce your faith, all you had to do was to say that Yeshua was not the Messiah. And you could go back to church and practice. And so the people who renounced their faith were called the lapses. They lapsed in faith. And so there was a controversy with the lapses. The lapses would renounce their faith so that they can stay alive. And so the book of Hebrews, we're made to understand, was written to encourage the people not to go back to the kind of Judaism that they had, because Yeshua is greater than all that had gone past, and they ought to stay in the way that is called Christianity. So this morning I want to speak to the contemporary lapses. People who have left the faith, but they are stayed members in the churches, the denominational churches, believing that they're saved, but they are mere pretenders to the title being a believer. I want to talk to the lapses in this age of Laodicea, the lapses, to see if they really understand that the witness, the book of the law, is holding them accountable to the book of the covenant. Do they really understand it? And the real witness, the true witness, according to Yohanan, is the Messiah himself. And so we have got to understand that. In fact, we're made to understand that it was Constantine who changed the seventh-day Sabbath to Sunday. Or he attempted to, because nobody can change Yah's word, because the word cannot be broken, according to Yohanan chapter 10 and verse 35. But he made an attempt. And so many people who are worshiping today, and they're doing so on a Sunday, they are not understanding that it was changed by Constantine. Oh, yes. And so Constantine wrote, all judges and city people and the craftsmen shall rest upon the venerable day of the sun, that's Sunday. The country people, however, may freely attend to the cultivation of their field, because it frequently happens that no other days are better adapted for planting the grain in the furrows or the vines in trenches. That's Constantine. So that the advantage given by the heavenly providence may not, for occasion of a short time, perish. This is Constantine the Great, Emperor of Rome, 306 to 337. And he was the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity in 312. Now, what I want you to understand is that Constantine not only changed the seventh-day Sabbath, he changed the feast days, he changed Passover, he changed the Feast of Weeks, and he changed Tabernacles, he changed Yom Kippur, he changed the new moon of the seventh month, which is a Sabbath also. And so there are people who call themselves Sabbath keepers, who worship, or at least they attend church on the seventh day, but because they're not following the commandments of keeping the annual feast day, they too are lapses. They are lapses. And we need to understand that. When Constantine convened the Council of Nicaea in 325, it was to discharge the church from the Hebrew calendar. You better understand what I'm saying. In 325, AD, he convened the Nicene Conference, and he discharged the churches, the denominational churches, saying, you don't have to keep the calendar that the Jews keep, that Yah gave to Israel. That's for you and I. He discharged them. And so people today are worshiping and are telling you that we don't have to keep them because they're done away with. And I ask the question, by whom? By whose authority were they done away with? Go back and trace your step all the way back to 325. It was Constantine, and the word says, to whom you are obedient, he is your master. Because no man can serve two masters. And so the majority of the churches, denominational churches, they're following Constantine because they're not on Yah's calendar. If I were to say to the average person, next Sabbath, what is it? They wouldn't know that it's Passover. They wouldn't know that it's Pesach because they have no interest in that. Because Constantine, way back in 325, had moved them and put them on a Gregorian calendar, and they have missed the signs and the time that Yah wants them to see. And so it is interesting that many are involved in what I would call patchwork theology. You don't see a full garment. Not at all. And as I indicated, I want to talk to the lapses. So come back with me, as was read earlier, in the book of Luke. I love the physician. And we're going to look at chapter 19, verse 11, reading on. And as they heard these things, he added and spoke a parable because he was nigh to Jerusalem, and because they thought that the kingdom of Yah should immediately appear. They thought that. He said, therefore, a certain man, a nobleman, not just a man, a nobleman, went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom, to return, and he called his 10 servants. 10 in the Bible is global. He called everyone, all his servants, and delivered them 10 pounds, and said unto them, you could say $10, occupy till I come. But his citizens, listen to what the citizens, but his citizens hated him and sent a message after him saying, we will not have this man to reign over us. That's what the churches are saying. Yah says, keep my Sabbaths. And when he says keep my Sabbaths, he's not saying keep this week's Sabbath and next week's Sabbath. That's singular Sabbath. When he says keep my Sabbaths, plural, he's talking about the seventh-day Sabbath and the annual Sabbaths as well. The church says, no, we're not keeping it. We're not going to have this man rule over us. We're not going to do that. People are not saying that in words, but they're saying that in action. And actions speak louder than words. We are not going to allow this man to rule over us because we have no other king, silently they say this, but Constantine. Way back, the Jews said, we have no king but Caesar. And so the spiritual Israel of our time, they are saying the same thing, but in different ways. Because the word, if anything, is very clear in Yohanan, 1 Yohanan Aleph, chapter 3 and verse 4. It says what? Whoever committed sin, sin is the transgression of the law. And if the law says you ought to keep the feast days, keep the commandment, and you don't, it doesn't matter how religious you may become on the seventh-day Sabbath, when you miss the feast days, when you miss those festivals, those annual festivals, you are in transgression. You have violated the law. And therefore, the book of the law is holding you accountable to the book of the covenant. You've got to understand that. Because the word says in Isaiah 59 and verse 2 that your sins have separated you from Yahweh. And because you were separated from Yahweh, Yeshua had come to reconcile you back. And so the whole process of the feast days, they are the mechanics through which we learn how a soul is saved. And you say, you're not going to keep them because you prefer to listen to Constantine. And so you're a lapsy. You may tell yourself all kinds of different things, but you are indeed a lapsy. And I hear people say, well, we don't have to keep them because we're under grace. We're under grace. For it is by grace are we saved. No, by faith. By faith. And not of yourself, it is a gift of Yah. So that faith, that level of faith that is in you, that justifies you, comes from Yah. But that which you must work out your salvation with, in fear and trembling, that ought to be imparted. But then I look at Titus 2 and verse 12, and Titus tells me, for the grace, the very same grace that people are boasting on, that because of grace, they don't even have to keep the law. Titus says, for the grace of Yahweh that bringeth salvation appeared to all men. To how many men? Everybody has been given grace. But what does grace do? Grace teaching us that denying wickedness and worldly lust, we should live soberly and righteously. That's what grace does. When you have grace, grace tells you to live righteously, not to break the law. And so these lapses are behaving strangely. In Luke 19, we read that this nobleman went in a far country, and he left the people, and he told them that they should tarry till he comes. So come with me to the book of Proverbs, Mishli, chapter 7. And the word says, my son, keep my words and lay up my commandments with thee. Keep them. Keep my commandments and live. Did you hear that? Keep my commandments and live, and my law as the apple of thine eye. Bind them up upon thy fingers, write them upon the table of thine heart. Say unto wisdom, thou art my sister, and call understanding thy kinswoman, that they may keep thee from the strange woman, from the stranger which flattereth with her words. Now, this woman is a church, a false church. She depicts that. She represents that. And so the youth is being told to avoid this kind of contemporary Jezebel. Avoid her, because she's seductive. Verse 6, for at the window of my house I looked through my casement and beheld among the simple one. The what? The simple one, the lapses. I discern among the youth a young man void of understanding, passing through the street near a corner, and he went to the way of her house. He went where? To the way of her house. In the twilight, in the evening, that's the same time we have Passover, at twilight. In the black and the dark night, he can't see. He's nocturnal. And behold, there met him a woman with the attire of a harlot, Revelation 17. And subtle of heart. She is loud and stubborn. Her feet abide not in her house, nor is she without now in the streets, and lieth in wait at every corner, because she has many daughters. So there is a church like this in many different corners of our community. We need to understand. And the simple ones, the lapses, they go to them. But the wise man here, Solomon, is warning you not to go to them because this young man here is following the calendar that is set by the Gregorian. You need to come back on the calendar that Yeshua sets. That's what we need to follow. So this young man nonchalantly desires this harlot. Verse 15, therefore came I forth to meet thee diligently to seek thy face, and I have found thee. I have decked my bed with coverings of tapestry. It didn't say my Bible was on my table. She's talking about a bed of tapestry with carved works with fine linen of Egypt. See where their linen's from? Egypt. Back in slavery, even in the bed with linen, you have slavery taking place here. I have perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Let us solace ourselves with loves. For the good man is not at home. Did you hear that? Her husband is not at home. He is gone on a long journey. He has taken a bag of money with him and will come home at the day appointed. Did you get that? This is the same man that Luke wrote about in chapter 19. He's gone on a journey, but before he went, he called his servant and gave them some pounds. The woman here is saying, my husband is not at home, he's gone. But he's coming back. She knows when he's coming back, the appointed time. He's coming back on a feast day. She knows that. She knows that he's coming back on the first day of the 7th month of Tishri. That's the Feast of Trumpets. She knows that. But this young man doesn't know that because he's a lapsey. He has lapsed in faith. And he's about to renounce everything to do with the Messiah because Constantine calls him otherwise. Got to understand that. The man has gone to receive his kingdom. That's what the word says. So then you must join me in the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 7. And we will begin at verse 9. The word says, I beheld till thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to a burning flame. Now, listen to verse 13. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man. Remember, we just read both in Luke chapter 19 and in Proverbs chapter 7 that the man has gone on a far journey into a far country. Of course, he tells us where he's gone in John chapter 14. Johannes, he said, don't let your heart be troubled. I've gone to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I'll come again. But they're telling people, we know not the hour that he's coming, but he told us when he's coming. The woman knows in Proverbs chapter 7. She says he's coming back on the appointed time. He's coming back on the Feast of Trumpets. So Daniel says, I saw in the night vision, and behold, one like the Son of Man came in the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him, and there was given to him dominion and glory and the kingdom. This is what he went for. He's coming back with it. But the word says that when he comes back with the kingdom, the lapses are in bed with someone else. Jezebel is their teacher. Balaam is their professor. Constantine is their counselor. And they are now prepared. They are well poised, like the lapses of ancient time, to renounce their faith. And so, 1 Timothy chapter 4, in verse 1 says, the Ruach HaKodesh speaks expressly in the last days, saying what? Says what? It says, they have lost their faith. They've given up their faith. They are in church every week. They are in assemblies every week. They attend church every week. But they have denied the faith. They are lapses. They have given up. They have given up. And so, come with me to the book of Shemot. That is the book of Exodus. And let us perambulate through chapter 23. The word says, thou shalt what? Not raise a false report. Put not thine hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness. Don't do that. Unrighteous witness, thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil. Don't do that. Neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to wrest judgment. Don't follow the multitude. Yeshua himself said, I speak to you in parables. It's not for the multitude to understand. Neither shalt thou countenance a poor man in his cause. If thou meet thine enemy's ox or his ass going astray, thou shalt surely bring it back to him again. Don't follow the multitude. And I'll show you why you ought not to follow the multitude. Come now with me to the book of Leviticus, chapter 23. And Yah spake to Moshe, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say unto them, concerning the feasts of Yah, which you shall proclaim to be holy convocations, even these are my feasts. Yah here is speaking to Moshe, the lawgiver, he who wrote the book of the law and placed it at the side of the ark to hold you accountable for the law that you broke inside. So speak to the children of Israel. And when Yah says speak to the children of Israel, he's speaking to believers in Yeshua. That's what an Israelite is. And you can read that in Ephesians chapter 2. Ephesians chapter 2, Paul writing here is letting you know that at one time when you did not believe, you did not have any interest in Yeshua, you were a Gentile. A Gentile is an unbeliever. But once you accept Yeshua, you have been brought into the commonwealth of Israel. And if you are brought into the commonwealth of Israel and you are living in the kingdom which starts in you, you must live like Judeans live. You must do what Israelites do. You are a seed of Yeshua. That's what the word says. He is the first brother you have. And he's not afraid to call you brethren. If your brother is a Jew and you are a Gentile, you are a bastard. It doesn't make sense. Your brother is a Jew. He's from Judah. And you ought to live even as Judeans live. Be perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. That's what he's saying. But the churches are saying we're Gentiles. There is no Gentile church. None at all. You are mere pretenders to it, the Church of Yah. In fact, most of us are simply fakes and frauds. Yeshua knows that. He calls people like that hypocrites. And he knows her heart. So he's talking to Moshe, and he says, speak to Israel. Speak to Israel that is coming out of Egypt. And what I'm saying to you will resonate throughout all generations of Israelites, even to the time of Laodicea, the now time. So Israel is not a place spiritually. It is a people who have accepted the Messiah and are living as Judeans live. Now, just think of it this way. If you will not keep the festival of your elder brother, Yeshua, how willing would he be to save you? How willing? So Moses speak to Israel. Verse 3, 6 days shalt thou no work be done. But the seventh day is a Shabbat of rest and holy convocation. We shall do no work therein. It is a Sabbath of Yah. It is Sabbath of who? Of Yahweh, not of the Jews. Yah said, these are my Sabbaths. And the first thing we must recognize here, that the seventh-day Sabbath is a festival. It's a feast days. It is the first of 7. So when a people take the seventh day out and say, we will keep this, and they leave the other 6, they invoke James 2:10 that says if you offend in one point, you are guilty of all. And that's why the book of the law is a witness against what is inside that you have broken. And so, again, all those who cherry pick the seventh-day Sabbath from the rest of the other Sabbaths, you're a lapsey. And those who don't keep any at all, saying they're under grace, they too are lapses. They too are lapses. So Yah says, verse 5, that in the 14th day of the first month, now this is Sabbath coming up. If you ask the average person, they will tell you, what day will Sabbath be? Today is what? The 5th day of what? April? The 5th day of April. So next Sabbath will be the 12th of April. That's what the average mind will tell you. But Yah's calendar says it is the 14th day of Nisan, the first month. You see the distinction here? You see the confusion here? The people of Yah are following the calendar of Constantine. To them, it is the 4th month of the year. Yah says it's the first month of my year. You mustn't walk before Yah, you must walk behind him. And so I just want to show you this because there is no ambiguity in Leviticus chapter 23. As I indicated, whether it is patent or latent, there's nothing that you can read between the lines. Yah says, these feasts, these festivals are mine. And I want my people to keep them in the 14th day of the first month, which is Sabbath, and even in Yah's Passover, here it is again, on the 15th day of the same month is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So we're going to have Passover on the 14th, which is Sabbath, and the next day being Sunday is also a Sabbath, the Sabbath of Unleavened Bread. And the majority of people will not keep them, yet they'll go to church on Sunday, and they will close shops on Easter Sunday. The King James Version that mentions Easter, it's a misinterpretation. They mean Passover, should have been Passover. So, Yah says we ought to keep Passover. And I want to read you something from the book of Yobelim, the book of Yobelim, which is the book of Jubilees, and they've taken it out of your Masoretic text. And I'm reading here from the Hallelujah Scriptures, and I'm reading from Yobelim chapter 6. And I'm reading from verse 15. And he gave to Noah and his sons a sign that there should not be a flood on the earth again. We ought to tell that to Nimrod. He placed his rainbow in the cloud for a sign of the everlasting covenant, and there should not be a flood again on the earth to destroy it all the days of the earth. We get that? Yah has made a covenant that is an everlasting covenant throughout all generations. For this reason, it is ordained and written in the tablets of the Shemaim, that's the heavens, that they should celebrate the festival of Shabbat. For this reason, you must celebrate the festival of Shabbat in the months once a year. How often? Once a year, to renew the covenant every year. The church says we're not doing that. You must renew your covenant experience, agreement with Yah, every single year. But because the denominational churches are following the calendar set by Gregorian, they missed it. And this old festival was celebrated in the Shemaim from the day of creation. Did you get it? When I hear people say, these are for the Jews, the word here says, the Yobalin, the book of Yobalin, is a book that Moses wrote. And this book was found among the manuscript of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It says here that the festival was kept from the day of creation. Shall I read it again? And this whole festival was celebrated in the Shemaim, in the heavens, from the day of creation till the days of Noah, 26 Yobalin, and 5 weeks of year, and Noah and his son observed it. So before there was a Jew, Noah kept it. And you tell me that it's done away with. Verse 20, and it says, and you shall command the children of Israel, that's us too, command them to observe this festival in all their generations, that's plural, generations, for a command unto them one day in the year, in this month, and they shall celebrate the festival. Listen to this in verse 21. For it is the festival of Shavuot and the festival of first fruits. Did you get that? Yeshua was rose on first fruits. And so when we keep the festival of weeks, we are celebrating what? First fruits. The church says this is the celebration of the gift of the Holy Spirit. That's not what it says here. Let's read it again for emphasis. For it is the festival of Shavuot and the feast of first fruits. Yeshua died on Passover and he rose in first fruits. It is twofold and a double nature, according to what is written and engraved concerning it celebrated. Why is it twofold? Because Passover is part of Shavuot. You count the Omer 50 days after Passover, and it takes you to Feast of Weeks. So if the first fruit is fit, as Yeshua is the wave sheaf, the rest of the harvest can be reaped. Now, they tell us that the Holy Spirit was given on the day of Pentecost. That's what they teach us. I want you to come with me to the book of Yohanan. The book of Yohanan, and we will dilate upon chapter 20 for a few minutes. And the word says that, verse 11 that is, that Mary stood without at the sepulchre, weeping as she wept. She stooped down and looked into the sepulchre, and seeth two angels in white sitting, the one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Yeshua was. She is in search of the Messiah. And when she had thus said, what did she say? The word says that someone said to her, Woman, why weepest thou? She said unto them, Because they have taken away my master, and I know not where they have laid him. And when she had thus said, she turned herself and saw Yeshua. When did she see him? On the morning of first fruits. Yeshua standing and knew not that it was Yeshua. Yeshua said unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? Whom seekest thou? She, supposing him to be the gardener, said unto him, Sir, if thou have borne him hence, tell us where thou hast laid him, and I will take him away. Then Yeshua said, Miriam. And then she knew who it was. He called her by name. But he told her, don't touch me because I've not yet been waved. I've not yet been waved to my Father, because the first fruit has to be waved, to be accepted. But the point I really want to make is simply this. Verse 19. Then the same day, the same what? The first fruit. The day of first fruit. At the evening, being the first day of the week, Sunday, same day. When the doors were shut where the disciples were assembled, for fear of the Jews, came Yeshua and stood in the midst and said unto them, Peace be unto you. And when he had so said, he shewed unto them his hands and his side. Then were the disciples glad, and they saw the Master. Then said Yeshua to them again, Peace be unto you, as my Father has sent me, and so I sent you. And when he had said this, he breathed on them and said unto them, Receive the Holy Ruach. Did you get that? The disciples received the gift of the Ruach on the day of first fruit, not at Pentecost. The church teaches that, at least some of them, that the gift of the Ruach was given on the day of Pentecost. But we just read, Yohanan tells us that the Ruach, the Holy Spirit, was given to the disciples on the same day that Yeshua met with them, the day of first fruit. And they count now 50 days until the day of Pentecost. So it was 50 days after that the other people received it. We've got to understand that. And of course, also, I'm addressing the lapses. Remember that. There are those who say we don't have to keep them because they're done away with. They are fulfilled, they say. Yeshua says in Matthew 5 and verse 17, don't even think that I've come to destroy what the law, Moses, and the prophets wrote. I've come to fulfill them. So we see that fulfillment is not the same as destroying. I have not come to destroy, but to fulfill. That's what he said. So come with me to the book of Luke again, chapter 22. And we're now dealing with what they call the Lord's Supper. I call it Passover. And of course, Friday evening we will be having this supper. And when the hour was come, he sat down, and the 12 Talmudim, that's his disciples, with him, and he said unto them, With desire, I desire to eat the Passover with you before I suffer. I really want to eat the Passover with you. For I say unto you, I will not any more thereof. I won't eat it, though, until it be fulfilled in the kingdom of Yah. The question is Passover fulfilled? Yeshua said, I am not going to eat the Passover with you until it is fulfilled in the kingdom made new. The church said it's done away with. Yeshua said, no, it is to be fulfilled. And the reason it is to be fulfilled is simply this. When the children of Israel would kill the lamb on the 14th day of the first month, that's Nisan, they would eat the meal at twilight that evening leading into unleavened bread. Yeshua was the lamb this year, and he died. He died. He was the lamb. The lamb couldn't eat the lamb, could it? He said, I will eat it in the kingdom made new. The church says, we're not going to keep it. We're not going to keep it. Now the Spirit speaketh expressly, that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith. Not from the churches, from the faith. They are still stayed members in the denominational churches, whether they be Baptist, Pentecostal, Catholic, Seventh-day Adventist, Seventh-day Baptist, Seventh-day Church of Yah. Whatever it is, they will remain. But if they're not practicing what Isaiah 8:20 says, to the law and to the testimony to the prophets, there is no light in them. Isaiah 55 and verse 11 says, my word will not return to me void. And John chapter 10 and verse 35 says, my word cannot be broken. Yes, they broke the covenant by way of their inaction, but my word cannot be broken. And so we've got to understand that on this May the 7th, March the 7th, I should say, 321, Roman Emperor Constantine issued a civil decree making Sunday a rest day, changing the Sabbath. Now, I can't understand how people know all this and still remain nonchalant, keeping a day as a Sabbath substitute when there is no authority in Scriptures to do that. None at all. And so, let me just bring this to its closure. In Zechariah, we're going to look at Zechariah chapter 13 and see what tariffs Yah has for such people. Zechariah chapter 13, and we're going to be reading verses 7 and 8. Awake, O sword. What? Sword. Against my shepherd, against your pastors who are teaching you wrongly, and against the man that is my fellow, saith Yah of hosts, smite the shepherd, and the sheep shall be scattered. And I will turn mine hand upon the little ones. And it shall come to pass that in all the land, saith Yah, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die. 2/3 of the lapses who have renounced their faith and will not turn back to Yah's calendar. He says 2/3 of them will die. But the third shall be left therein. And I will bring the third part through the fire, through the tribulation, and will refine them as silver is refined, and will try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name, Yahweh, not Jesus, not Lord, and I will hear them. That's the third. Not the multitude. I will say, it is my people. And they shall say, Yah is my Elohim. That's the covenant people. Only 1/3. 2/3 will be cut off. Why? Because of their unbelief. They have left the faith, but they are members of the Constantinian church. Constantine turned Christianity into a state religion. And that's what the people are following. And it doesn't matter how much you say to them, thus saith Yahweh, they will not hear you. But he that hath an ear to hear, Let him hear what the Ruach said. In Yeshua's name I pray. Amen.